Sorry about that. Okay, so our statewide team of coaches, we work one-on-one with participants. We're providing services like budgeting, savings planning, credit building, energy incentive navigation, financial and energy education, and debt management. GreenSavingSmart provides a pathway to access rebates, incentives, and available services in order to realize cost savings and carbon reduction. We're here to help Vermonters access programs and services that use clean energy and save them money. And last, another way GreenSavingSmart supports the community is by hosting a series of financial and energy related workshops like this one right here you're all joining. There's a wide range of topics we'll be covering in these sessions. You can find out more about these at GreenSavingSmart.org. And on that note, anyone you want to refer in your community to our program, please have them visit GreenSavingSmart.org. Really easy. Click on the Connect with a Coach button, then click Apply Now and complete the eligibility form. It's a quick and easy form, and someone will get back to you. You can also reach out directly to me. I've got my information right here. And with that, let's get started. Why we're all here today. Is it time to go electric? So transportation is the single largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in Vermont. And with that just signed Inflation Reduction Act in effect now, I feel like we're really on the cusp of a major revolution. And we are so lucky. We've got some great presenters here today. I've got David Roberts from Drive Electric Vermont. Samantha Hurt from the MileageSmart program is joining us. Stephen Wisbaum from Mower Electric. And hopefully we've got some time near the end of the session for questions and discussion. With that, David Roberts, Drive Electric Vermont, is up first. Dave has over 10 years experience here in Vermont with electric vehicles. We're so happy to have him. And Dave, take it away.
All right, thanks, Eric. And thanks everybody for joining. Great to be here to give you a little information about electric vehicles in Vermont. Excuse me. So I work on the Drive Electric Vermont program. It's a public-private partnership established about 10 years ago now by VEIC. We're a nonprofit based in Winooski, and we work closely with the state of Vermont, electric utilities, and other partners like Capstone and community action agencies to advance transportation electrification in the state. We've got a website that I'll be showing some of the resources from our website that's really intended to help consumers think about which EVs might work for them, all the different incentives that are available, and information on charging infrastructure and other related issues. So why go electric? Why make the switch to a plug-in electric vehicle? So a couple of the top reasons that we hear or think, talking with Vermonters doing this work for the last 10 years, is top, reducing emissions. So as Eric mentioned, transportation is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state. There are also other harmful tailpipe emissions that come out of gasoline vehicles. So, making the switch to an EV can improve community health. They have great performance. If you haven't had a chance to get behind the wheel of one or go for a ride in one, I encourage you to check one out if you can at some point. They're a lot of fun to drive, a lot of zip, more performance than most people think before they have that chance to see one firsthand. They're quiet, so you can have a nice conversation. It's sort of a lower stress driving experience. And for a lot of people, if you have a place where you can plug in at home, it's very convenient. You can skip the gas station. The car is always ready to go for you in the morning. So it's actually a lot of people feel like it's more convenient to drive an EV than a gasoline vehicle because you can charge at home if you can charge at home. And then, of course, savings. It's one of the things we're here today to talk about is some of the savings that are out there, both in terms of the fuel costs, incentives, and other things related to EVs. So I'm going to run through these slides pretty quickly. Happy to answer questions. And if folks want a copy of these, I think we can make sure that you have an opportunity to get them. So don't worry about taking notes on everything. We know that reducing vehicle travel is the best way to reduce transportation emissions. So walking, bicycling, public transportation are all the best things that we can do, but most Vermonters need to drive for various reasons. And if you are driving, making the switch to an all-electric vehicle can reduce your emissions by 60 to 70%, or even up to 80% if you're powering your EV with renewable energy. So, and that includes where your electricity is coming from, the battery manufacturing, and all those things. So they're not completely without emissions, but they are drastically reducing emissions compared to gasoline vehicles. In Vermont, we've got two basic types of EVs that are available, all electric vehicles powered solely by the battery. And they'll go up to over 300 miles on a charge before you need to find a place to plug in. And then you have plug-in hybrids that tend to have a less battery range, so typically 20 to 40 miles of range on the battery, and then a gasoline engine for sort of backup for longer trips or if you can't find a place to charge and things like that. So the idea with the plug-in hybrid is you do a lot of your daily driving on the battery, but then you have that gasoline as sort of a backup when you need it. And here's some of the more popular models that we see in Vermont these days. So on the left, some of the all-electric models. The Chevrolet Bolt is one of the more affordable new EVs. It has 260 miles of range. The starting price for the model year 2023 vehicles was actually reduced some. So that's $27,000 before any of the incentives that we'll be talking about come into play. The Nissan Leaf is actually the most registered EV in the state. And the Tesla Model 3 is nationally one of the top selling EVs. On the right are some of the plug-in hybrid options. The Subaru Crosstrek and Toyota RAV4 Prime both have all-wheel drive, which is something that we know a lot of Vermonters look for, especially if you're in a more rural part of the state. These are some of the more recent sort of new arrivals that are hitting the roads, and all of these have either all-wheel drive as standard or as an optional feature. And the prices, unfortunately, are relatively high right now. Prices across the board for new vehicle purchases are about $40,000 is the national average price for a vehicle purchase, for a new vehicle purchase today. There's an industry-wide chip shortage that's really affecting automakers. There's very limited supply out there, so it can be hard to find a good deal on one. So I'm glad Samantha is here. She'll be providing more information about the MileageSmart program for used high-efficiency vehicles, as they are available at substantially lower cost than these new vehicle options. But if you do qualify for the incentives, the prices can come down significantly. And we certainly do hope to see prices continue to come down, more affordable models hitting the roads here in the next couple of years. We do have on the Drive Electric Vermont website, driveelectricvt.com, we've got a website sort of EV model explorer. And I'm just gonna pull that up here quickly. So this is driveelectricvermont.com. Under the Find Your EV, Compare Vehicles, you can show all the models that are currently available for sale in the state. You could say, if I just want to look at plug-in hybrids, maybe you want to look at ones that have all-wheel drive as standard or as an optional feature. So if I'm looking at standard plug-in hybrids, with standard all-wheel drive, it's going to show me all the options that are out there. Of course, as I mentioned, some of these may not actually be at dealers because of the supply chain issues, but many dealers are taking orders. You can get on a list, and hopefully their inventory situation will be improving in the next few months, or over the course of the next year at least. So there's over 40 models available today, and growing number of all-wheel drive and some of the higher ground clearance vehicles that folks who are dealing with mud season may may be able to find suitable vehicles, whereas a couple of years ago there were fewer options in that realm. We're going to be hearing a little bit more about some of the other electric options, but there are electric buses in Vermont and more coming. We've got electric commercial vehicles. If you're in the Burlington area, CarShare Vermont has quite a few all-electric vehicles in their fleet now, and they have great programs to help reduce the cost of vehicle ownership. We'll hear from Stephen Wisbaum about Mow Electric and electric lawn care equipment options. There are electric bicycles and motorcycles, and I want to just take a moment to talk a little bit about some of the e-bike incentives. The state of Vermont just launched an e-bike incentive program a couple of weeks ago, and if you're eligible, there are income eligibility requirements and some requirements on the type of bikes that are eligible. But if you meet those requirements, the sort of standard incentive is up to $250 for a state incentive and up to $400 for a state incentive if you meet the sort of lower income qualifications. And you can layer that or stack that on top of many or most Vermont utilities are offering e-bike incentives as well. So when you combine the state incentive with the utility incentives, you could see up to $600 if you meet the lower income requirements. And I have some links here on the Drive Electric site with more information on the state e-bike incentive program and some links to the utility incentives. So, e-bikes they can be quite pricey, but the prices there are also coming down, and they can be a great option if you're in an area that, suitable for biking. A lot of people have questions about what the winter weather means for driving an EV, and the main thing that we want to stress people are aware of is that cold weather will reduce your electric range significantly. In the worst case scenario, we usually say plan for about half of the official estimate from the automaker. So if you have a Chevrolet Bolt, which officially gets 260 miles of range, worst case, you should be looking at maybe 130 miles of range. So for most people, 130 miles of range is still plenty for what they need for sort of daily travel needs. But if you're doing a lot of long distance travel, or you have a super long commute, or longer road trips, important to keep in mind that you will see quite a bit less range in winter. There are some things you can do to kind of pull back some of that range that you might otherwise lose. So a lot of EVs have cold weather option packages, and we strongly encourage those when they're available. They'll usually have heated seats and steering wheels that are more efficient than using the cabin heat in the vehicle, so that'll give you back some of that range. Some EVs have more efficient heat pump heating systems, so if you are using the cabin heat, it'll work a little more efficiently. You can preheat the vehicles while they're still plugged in. That'll give you a little more range. And then if you're really trying to eke out every last mile, just slowing down a little bit can give you a significant boost. Some other considerations are just to be aware of is that when the batteries are really cold, it can slow down some of the charging, especially the fast charging that I'll give you a little more information on in a few minutes. So if you're doing a lot of long distance travel, you might look for an EV that has a battery heating system that'll preheat the battery before you arrive at that charger. Hopefully we'll start to see some of these issues go away in the coming years as battery technology continues to improve. But for now, just important to know you will see less range. There are some other considerations related to winter operations. And we do have, there's a link here on the bottom, some more information on the Drive Electric site about winter range, which EV models have heat pumps and that sort of information. So if you want to dig in, there's quite a bit more information there as a resource for you. In terms of cost savings, this is one of the sort of great things about EVs is that you can save quite a bit of money on fuel. So this chart is showing a comparison of gasoline prices, which are pretty all over the place as we've seen inflation into the last early months of 2022. Costs have really gone up for gasoline, and electric rates are regulated by the state, so they do they will, increase over time with inflation, but they're much more stable than gasoline rates. So for somebody driving about 1,000 miles a month, average car, average prices, right now, a gasoline vehicle might be running you somewhere around $175 a month. And an EV on the average Vermont electric rate might be closer to $60, $70 a month. And a number of Vermont utilities are offering lower off-peak rates that could bring that cost down even further. So there's, very significant savings. With the current example here, about over $2,000 in fuel cost savings over the last 5 years. In addition to the fuel cost savings, there are also savings on maintenance. So EVs, especially the all-electric vehicles, they don't have internal combustion engines, so there's no more oil changes, there's no transmission, there's a lot fewer moving parts, so there's less to go wrong. And Consumer Reports has looked into sort of if you combine the fuel savings, the maintenance savings, and even factoring in depreciation, which in some EV models is a little bit higher than comparable gasoline models because of the way some of the incentives work. They see total ownership savings over the life of most EVs from $6,000 to $10,000, and that's before factoring in some of the Vermont purchase incentives that are out there. So really significant potential savings. In terms of charging, most people charge at home overnight. That's the lowest cost, easiest way to do it if you can. Growing number of Vermont workplaces also have charging. So if you have a commute to a workplace, you might have charging available. If you don't have it available yet, you may want to speak to your employer and encourage them to think about it. The state will be likely launching some new grant programs for workplace charging later this year. So may pay to kind of be ready to jump on that opportunity. And then public charging is something EV drivers don't generally use on a daily basis if they can charge at home, but it's really important that it's there for longer distance travel. And if folks are living in an apartment or condos, maybe they have more challenges accessing charging at their home, then it's great to have some public charging nearby that they might be able to use. So there's growing amount of public charging across the state as well. And I'll show you a map of that in a minute. When we talk about charging, there's 3 basic types. So there's level 1 charging, which just plugs into a standard 120 volt outlet. This equipment comes with every EV. You get about 5 miles of range per hour of charging. So if you're driving 40 miles or less a day, the level 1 charging is oftentimes sort of good enough for you, especially if it's a plug-in hybrid. A lot of plug-in hybrid owners are just fine with this level 1 charging. If you have an all-electric vehicle or you just sort of want to charge faster, have some increased convenience, a lot of people will step up to the level 2 charging, which is 240 volts. So that's like an electric clothes dryer type of circuit. And this is an example of a level 2 charger that can plug right into a 240 volt receptacle. So some people will have this type of receptacle available. It's called a NEMA 1450. This is a NEMA 650. So if you have an RV or other sort of heavy duty electrical equipment, you may already have an outlet like this near your garage. You can just plug the charging equipment right into that. If you don't, you may need to have an electrician come in and do some wiring to put one in. It can cost several $100s. There are potentially some incentives. A number of utilities are offering incentives for level 2 charging. We do have information on those programs on our Drive Electric Vermont incentive resources. So, there are some opportunities to save some money on the installation, but it can, depending on your home situation, it can cost significant, up to $1,000. Usually not more than that, but worst case scenario, it could be if your electric service needed an upgrade, for example. There are also public level 2 chargers. So that's this sort of equipment. This can charge 2 vehicles at the same time. You have payment options. It's typically about $1 an hour, something like that. So a little bit more than what you'd be paying for home charging, but still less than you'd be paying for gasoline in most circumstances. And every EV automaker uses the same plug for charging, except for Tesla for level 1 and 2. This is called a J1772 plug. So unless you're driving a Tesla, it's fairly universal. When you step up to the next level of DC fast charging, which is much higher powered and more limited availability, typically along sort of well-traveled corridors or more urban areas in the state. This will give you an 80% charge in about 30 minutes. So it's a lot faster, a lot more convenient. It also can be more costly because the equipment is a lot more expensive to put in and operate. And this equipment here for the fast charging, it's a little bit different. They use a little different plug than the level 1 and 2, but most automakers are using a plug called the SAE CCS plug, and we're seeing more of those across the state. So the orange locations here are fast chargers, and the green are level 2 chargers. And you can see there's pretty good coverage in Vermont and beyond. Still some gaps that the state is supporting filling, but Vermont actually has the highest per capita availability of public charging in the country currently. And this map is from a website called plugshare.com that we recommend EV drivers check out if they're needing to access charging away from home. It has a lot of great information. If you are driving a Tesla, Tesla has their own dedicated fast charging network, which is really convenient and makes long distance travel a lot easier in a Tesla. It's currently only for Tesla vehicles, but they are saying that they're planning to open it up to others in the future. So we should know more about that in the next 6 months or so, how Tesla might be going about that. The state has been investing some of the Volkswagen diesel settlement funds and building out more charging infrastructure. There's 17 more locations on the way. Hopefully a number of these will be in the ground this construction season. I know South Hero and Newport are the next two. South Hero, I understand, should be up and running, and Newport hopefully be up in the next few weeks. Some of the other locations may be lagging a little bit due to construction delays and supply chain issues. But basically, once these are all built out, you won't be more than 30 miles to a fast charger wherever you are in the state. And there's also federal funds coming. Vermont's getting $20 million in federal funds to build out more fast charging at these locations. The state just submitted a plan to the Federal Highway Administration, calling out sort of these rough areas that are starred in the map here. And this is part of a national effort to build out corridors across the country. So this will really greatly expand charging availability in Vermont and beyond. Talking about pricing for public charging. So again, the level 2 is like a little bit more than you would pay to charge at home, but the fast charging is more expensive. Some of the vehicle manufacturers will offer kind of discount packages. So if you buy a Volkswagen ID4, they'll bundle in some free charging on the Electrify America network. If you don't have access to those kinds of deals, you can also subscribe oftentimes to pay maybe $5 to $10 a month for a subscription and then have a discount on the individual usage that you're doing. But generally, if you're not signed up for one of those plans, you could expect to see somewhere $15 to $20 per fast charge session. So it is quite a bit more expensive. And we don't encourage folks to rely on it for sort of their daily needs. There's a lot of different payment options. I won't run through them all, except to mention that the chip reader, so kind of what you might expect to find at a gas station today, the locations that are being funded by the state are required to have that technology. So if you're not a member of the network that's operating it, you should be able to just use your credit card to get access. Trip planning, this is a tool from the PlugShare website I mentioned. So if you are doing long distance travel, PlugShare can show you kind of where the fast chargers are located. You can also click on some locations and see if there are any sort of issues. This is from last October. There was a problem with the location near Albany. So it's just a good idea to kind of check your route before you hit the road and make sure that the chargers that you're planning to use are going to be available. Speaking about incentives, so this is just to sort of give you an idea of how the incentives can work. A combined purchase incentive for new Nissan Leaf. The standard incentive is sort of someone in the state who's moderate income, and then this is someone who meets the enhanced incentive requirements. So this would be less than 50,000 adjusted gross income for a single filer, or less than 75,000 if you're filing jointly. And the LEAF starts at $32,000. There's currently a federal tax credit of $7,500. There's a state incentive. The standard incentive is $2,500. If you qualify for the enhanced incentive, that's $4,000. Most utilities offer incentives that do vary depending on the utilities. On average, it's about $1,500 for a standard incentive and $2,500 for the enhanced incentives. So when you can stack all these together, you're going from a $32,000 new vehicle down to about $21,000 if you're sort of meeting that moderate income requirement, or $18,400 if you're in that enhanced incentive pool. One important consideration with the federal tax credit is that this may not be available if you don't have the tax liability. So if you don't owe $7,500 in taxes in the year you purchase the vehicle, you can only claim up to what your tax liability is. So that's been an issue. A lot of folks who are in that position might consider leasing, in which case the leasing company can pass through the credit as a lease incentive. And there are some changes through the Inflation Reduction Act that just passed this week. And one of them is that starting in January 2024, so not for a while yet, but starting then, dealers will be able to pass through a tax credit to a purchaser. So, keep your eyes out for this one if you're wanting to take advantage of that federal tax credit on a purchase. Some of the other issues, the vehicles need to be manufactured in North America now to be eligible. That happened this week with the passage. There are also some new income eligibility requirements. And then starting in January 2023, so not yet, but in January 2023, there will be a new tax credit for used EVs, 30% of the purchase price up to $4,000. The EV needs to be priced under $25,000 or less, and there are some income eligibility requirements. And that used EV credit will also be transferable to the dealer starting in January 2024. So a few years out, there should be some significant improvements for folks who don't have that tax liability, but just not quite today yet. We've got an incentive calculator tool on the Drive Electric website where you can put in your utility, the type of vehicle, whether it's new or used, the make of the vehicle, your tax filing status, and your adjusted gross income, which is the income screening, and that will give you an estimate of all the different incentives that you might qualify for. So we do try to keep this updated, and it's a great way to explore the various incentives that are out there. So that's it from me. I don't know, I'm guessing we may want to take questions at the end, but I'm happy to answer any questions now. And otherwise, I look forward to hearing what Samantha and Stephen are going to say.
Hey, thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate it. Quick question on that. I know that's, Dave, that's a big deal, has been a big deal, people who may not have the tax liability. So is that for sure starting January 2024, they'll be able to pass that through to the dealer? So, or are we waiting on that still?
It's for sure in the bill that's now signed into law. So I think there are still some details. The IRS has until January 2024 to figure out exactly how that's going to work for dealerships. And it's not clear that every dealer may be sort of participating in that offer. So there may be some hoops for dealers to jump through. I think a lot of them will, given our experience working with dealers on other incentive opportunities in Vermont, but that's sort of a TBD. And I'm sure part of that will depend on whether, how the reimbursement or credits are working through the IRS to cover the dealer's side of it.
Okay. What is your feeling, and what kind of feedback are you getting from Vermont dealers? I hear all the time, I want to get an EV, but I can't find one. And so I realize there's supply chain issues. There's multiple issues going on. What's your feeling on when we can see, more availability and more different price range, not just high-end vehicles, but, more affordable vehicles and maybe the whole gamut?
Right. It's hard to say for sure. Automakers are investing billions of dollars in new factories to scale up production. It should bring down the cost. They should be bringing out some more affordable models. Chevy's going to have an Equinox EV that's due out next year that will be in the $30,000 range. Other automakers have similar plans. So, the wild card is kind of this chip shortage, and will the automakers be able to secure enough supply of chips to keep up with their production goals? And it seems like they're getting better at that. And there certainly are additional chip manufacturing facilities underway, but they take usually years to actually start production. So, we're hoping that some of these issues will be improving over the next year and certainly into, 2023, but it's hard to know for sure. And a lot of it may depend on the particular model people are looking at. Some models, some manufacturers are sort of having an easier time navigating, whereas like Volkswagen has a bit of a double whammy because a lot of the wiring harnesses that are used in Volkswagen EVs have been made in the Ukraine, which of course has been impacted by the Russian invasion there. There is also a situation just right now, a lot of automakers are switching over to the 2023 model year. So that's sort of further, usually they shut down the factories for a little while, get retooled a bit to start making the 2023 vehicles. So that's further limiting availability right now. And we do, folks can shop a little further afield. This state incentives, you can get a state incentive for a new vehicle if you purchase it at an out-of-state dealer. So some folks are looking out of state and getting sort of a mail-in rebate after the fact from the state and their utility. So there are some vehicles out there, but they can be difficult to find, and certain models are in better supply than others.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like, in the near term, there might be a little bit of a pain point. There just might not be that inventory, and with the restrictions with the new bill. But as more manufacturers come online, more battery manufacturers come online here domestically. So next couple years, for sure, you're just gonna. My feeling is we're gonna have a lot more inventory and range of vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Dave. We will have some questions at the end here if we have time, but we do have some other presenters. Up next, we've got Samantha Hurt from the MileageSmart program. This is an awesome program, helps Vermonters purchase used electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles. And we're happy to have you, Sam. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Eric. Let me just bear with me while I try to share my screen. Okay. Sorry, I have way too many windows up. And here we are. So as Eric mentioned, my name is Samantha Hurt. I am the MileageSmart program manager. MileageSmart is managed by Capstone. It is technically a program of all of the caps. So if you're familiar with Capstone and the other caps, they are each regional, but MileageSmart is a statewide program. And what I'll be covering today is mostly process and digging into the details of the program. As always, Dave does a wonderful job setting the stage, why folks should get into driving electric, how easy it can be. And I feel like every time I am on one of these with Dave, I learn something new. So thank you, Dave. So as Eric mentioned, MileageSmart is an incentive for hybrids, EVs, plug-in hybrids, 25% of the initial sale price up to $5,000. This is for low to moderate income Vermonters. So in order to qualify, one would have to be at or below 80% median income based on household size. They'd have to be at least 18 years old. cannot be claimed as a dependent, and they must be a resident. So here, this chart shows the income guidelines. This has recently changed. If you just happen to have been tracking MileageSmart, you would have seen we sent out kind of a blast showing that our income requirements change because as the state median income is adjusted, so do our income requirements. So if you qualify and you apply and your application is approved, your next step will be to look for a vehicle. So in order for a vehicle to be eligible, it would have to be used, and it has to have a minimum 40 mpg combined or higher. So this is all electric vehicles, all plug-in hybrid vehicles, and some conventional hybrids. It can be a little bit tricky because if you look at the MPG of a vehicle, it'll show the city MPG and highway MPG. Some cars do get 40 highway MPG, but if their city MPG doesn't quite reach that level, then it would not be eligible. It has to be clean, no salvages. That's pretty straightforward. We don't want to be setting anyone up with a lemon, getting them into a loan that turns out they won't be able to even drive the car. And the vehicle has to be located at a Vermont dealership, registered. They have to have a license number. And the last piece, so when I approve a purchase, I double check, I make sure the price of the vehicle isn't too high, especially now the way that the market has been. We really want to make sure that dealers aren't taking advantage of folks. So there is a system that I take the VIN number for the vehicle and I cross-check it to make sure it is within an okay range. And we do have one sole loan requirement. So whenever I approve a deal, I capture the vehicle information, but I also ask for financing details if you choose to finance. And that requirement is that the APR must not exceed 12%. We have this requirement in place because as a community or as an organization, and MileageSmart, a program of the CAPS, our main goal is to lift people out of poverty and set them up for success so that they can continue to improve their lives. And a lot of times, if they get set up with a loan, the APR is too high. Down the road, they might not be able to make payments. So that is a big requirement of ours. And also, I'm not gonna try to go to the website. I'll just get lost. But we do every year, we reassess all of the eligible cars, and on our website, we have an updated page where you can just go in and search. If you aren't sure about a car, you can type in the make or model, and it'll automatically populate if it is eligible. If it's not eligible, it won't be there. So it's pretty straightforward in that sense. And then additionally with cars, we do have a pretty decent sized group of dealers who have already registered with us. We've been up and running since October of 2020. And since then we have about 70 used and new car dealerships throughout the state who have registered with us. They're familiar with the program. And that is huge because if folks don't know about MileageSmart, they are able to walk into the dealership, and if the dealer thinks they're eligible, they will connect you with me. So Dave touched on this. There are so many other incentives available for high efficient vehicles. These are the utility rebates that are available for folks who are looking at purchasing either a used plug-in hybrid or a used EV. This is all on our website as well. This does change every now and then. We try to keep it as up to date as possible as utilities adjust what their rebates are. But it's a pretty good chance if you're looking at buying a used plug-in hybrid or an EV, you would be eligible to receive an additional rebate from your utility provider. And at the bottom, Dave, you'll notice that this is literally a clipping of your website, but I just wanted to plug this in. As Dave mentioned, there will be an upcoming used EV credit for 30% up to $4,000. Biggest thing to note, this takes effect January 1, 2023. So keep an eye out for this. We'll be doing a round of education and outreach on this for folks who are interested, because it will be stacking with MileageSmart. So that'll be really exciting for folks who are able to get the full $5,000 from us, and also this $4,000. That's a huge chunk of change. So recap, the process is very simple, very quick. You go online, apply there. It comes to me. It's a pretty quick turnaround time. I will say, because of the times, more and more people are interested in this program. So it is taking me a little bit longer to sift through applications. But once you apply, you are qualified, you find a car, I get the paperwork, get a loan if you need it. And typically this process can take just a day. I have people who apply in the morning, they go to the dealership, and they leave the dealership that same day with a car. So this program is really great for folks who they try to leave their house in the morning, their car breaks down, and they can't put any more money into it because that would be more than what the car is worth, and they really need a car. And they're trying to save on gas money. So we have a lot of folks in that situation, just trying to figure out how to get from A to B, get their kids to school and work on time. So it's really fast, really simple. So here's an example. We have someone apply, Jane. She has a 4-person household, $60,000 reported household income, not a dependent. She's a resident and she's at least 18 years old. She's eligible. So she heads to the dealership. She finds this 2018 Nissan Leaf. It is below the JD Power Clean retail value. It is an eligible car. She gets a loan. Everything looks great. So our incentive is 25% up to $5,000. Since the price is below $20,000, she gets that 25%, which is just over $4,000, and she is eligible for a GMP rebate. And because she is within their low-income customer range, she gets an extra $1,000 from them. And it's as simple as that. I try to make sure if folks come in and they don't have a rebate on their documents, I just try to let them know, because as you can see, that can just be a huge help. So make sure if you're looking at programs like this, that you're also keeping in mind those utility rebates. And that's it from me, short and sweet. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Sam. I have just a comment first. That is incredible with the new federal incentive and being able to stack that with the MileageSmart incentive. I mean, that's an amazing opportunity for folks to get into an efficient vehicle. So that's really excited. Question wise, I guess same question I had for Dave. What are you seeing and hearing from the dealers you work with as far as just vehicle availability?
Great question. So what I'm seeing in terms of inventory is Vermont is strapped for cars right now. And we were seeing it throughout the past year, inventory dropping. And just recently, I think MileageSmart is actually now being affected by the new car inventory drop.
Mhm.
I mean, July, just this past month, was one of our lowest months.
Wow.
There were just no cars. And one thing to keep in mind is if you do find a car, because of low inventory, prices are skyrocketing. That's not the case completely across the board. There are some wonderful dealers who do try to keep their prices reasonable, and folks are able to get into something that isn't totally outrageous compared to what that car would have been a year ago. But I will say this has made dealers more willing to look out of state. A lot of folks are able to ask the dealer, okay, can you keep your eye out on cars for sale out of state that you would be willing to bring onto your lot? And we have had that happen more often now, which is wonderful. And also because if you find a car from the South, it's going to last longer. It's not going to have that rust problem. So I think, dealers they're trying to make it work. They are working with us, trying to figure out how can we make it happen for folks who really want these cars and need these cars.
Okay. Thanks so much, Samantha. Really appreciate having you here today. We will, it looks like we do have some questions coming in. How are we doing on time? Let's see. Income cutoff from one person household. So I'm assuming that's the, just for a single, here we go, right here. So 51,968 annual, and that's just about 4,300 a month.
Yeah, so this has gone up. When they readjusted state median income, it went up by about $3,000.
And then Millie has, Millie, we have some time here. We're doing okay. If you want to come off mute or put it in the chat, you have battery life, or I'm guessing you're just on a used vehicle if you're looking into buying a used vehicle.
That's a good question. My best suggestion, because I am certainly not an expert and I would not claim to be on battery life of used vehicles because it can really vary from car to car.
Right.
I would just suggest to try to do as much research as possible. And I don't know, Dave, if you have input and maybe a better response to this question.
This is coming off mute, sorry. So I'm just putting a link in the chat to a resource, and I know we're a little tight on time, but that resource will provide some information on sort of battery health over the long term, and certainly happy to connect further with Millie or others if they have questions about specific models. I can say if you look at that resource, you'll see Nissan Leafs, which are one of the more popular EVs, but some of those earlier Leafs, the battery life is not holding up as well as some of the other options out there. So if you are looking at a used Leaf, definitely have the battery checked out and know what you're getting into before moving forward with that.
Okay. So I think we will move forward here. We can definitely hopefully have a few minutes at the end for more questions. All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna talk about electric lawn care equipment. Stephen Wisbaum is joining us from Mow Electric, and he's gonna tell us how we can kick the can in Mow Electric. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Make sure I'm unmuted.
We hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. I'm not sure why that's not my desktop that I want to be sharing. But let's see here. That's the desktop I want to be sharing. You seeing that?
Not yet, Stephen.
Okay. Go to screen share, share screen. See that?
Yes, we gotcha.
Okay,
There you go.
play from start. There we go. Okay. I'm going to try and make this really quick because people are probably getting tired. Thanks for having me. I'm the founder of the Mow Electric campaign. Basically, have just been spending some time encouraging the transition to electric lawn care equipment, both for environmental reasons, as also to save people money. We're obviously not talking about the same amount of money and fuel spent on mowing lawns, depending on even with a riding mower for homeowners. But this audience, I just, and this is a little tricky because there's residential mowers and lawn care, and then there's commercial. And some of the folks on this webinar may be interacting with people who have businesses that do mowing. And so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I will cover that piece because in fact, people that run lawn care businesses spend a huge amount of money on fuel and maintenance and repair of their conventional mowers. And there's opportunities to save a significant amount of money on switching to electric. It's a bit of a hurdle because there aren't the same incentives there are for electric cars. I'm working to change that. There are some incentives, but anyway, I'll get into that in a second. So, the environmental aspect of this, a recent Department of Transportation report in 2019 estimated that over almost 5.5 million gallons of gas is consumed in Vermont. That's a lot of gas. And if you drive around or walk around or you see all these lawns, they're all being mowed mostly with gas-powered equipment. And those engines are very inefficient, and they just actually, again, a homeowner may burn 5 or 10 gallons over the course of a year, a season. It may not seem like much, but when you multiply that by the number of yards that are burning that fuel, it's a lot of gas. But then a lot of people don't realize, but these larger call them commercial mowers that are used by contractors and institutions. They're zero-turn mowers. You see them everywhere. Those actually burn about 1 gallon an hour, and when you and many of these mowers are operated for 600 to 1,000 hours a year over the course of the growing season. It's a lot of gas. So you're looking at, I have some figures here. So 690 gallons at $4 or $5 a gallon. You see how this adds up versus the electricity used for an electric mower. I don't have the prices here, but it works out to about 50 cents an hour for the electricity for one of those mowers. So all this information is on the Mow Electric website. There's a cost calculator. Again, that's really only useful for people that are using the big mowers, so contractors, institutions, homeowners. They know what they pay for gas. It's not a lot, but it's more a convenience issue for homeowners in terms of the lack of service and repair, and just the convenience of electric mowers. There's a slide that shows it's just talking about the CO2 emissions of conventional. Again, this is focusing on the large commercial mowers. Of course, there's zero tailpipe emissions from electric mowers, which improves the air quality in communities, and very low noise levels. There is some noise because you still have a blade spinning. Here, this slide just addresses the economic benefits. Again, 50 cents an hour for electricity. And this again is the big commercial mowers. No maintenance costs. And then you have the overall, the lower life cycle cost, the cost of ownership. Pretty significant for people that, again, contractors that do lawn care or institutions. There's a lot of choices now. I think there's over 20 manufacturers of walk-behind electric mowers. People love these things. They work just as well as gas mowers without all the hassle with gas and problems with gas, ethanol and gas, and having to have it serviced. And so I don't encourage people to get rid of an operating gas mower, but when time comes, you've spent enough money on repair and it's just time to replace it. Electric mowers are the way to go. And in fact, I project that within 5 years, gas mowers won't even be sold anymore because these are just make so much sense. And that's where the industry is moving. In terms of riding electric mowers, these are residential. And what I mean by that, these mowers have a runtime of 1 to 2 hours. So they're not going to be used by a contractor. But they can be used in situations where multiple neighbors are sharing a mower in a homeowners association or nearby neighbors, where it doesn't need to be run more than 2 hours at a time. It can be run for 2 hours, plugged in for a couple, 3 hours, and then used again by someone else or even the same person. And the reason that's important is because these mowers start out about a mid-range, like the Ego mower. I think, well, there's 2 different versions depending on the deck size, but I think it's 4,000 to 5,500 and these is again for a residential application for a 2-hour runtime, hour and a half, 2-hour runtime. A commercial mower that needs a 6 to 8 hour runtime, you're looking at a minimum of $18,000, and they go up to 30 plus for the 4 varieties. There's some robotic mowers out there. These are not inexpensive. I don't know a lot of people that have them, but apparently they're pretty popular in certain parts of the country. And then there's also a large number of yard tools that are electric. And again, people, once they use an electric chainsaw or electric trimmer, they will never go back to gas. It's just so much more convenient. And then there are, I didn't update this slide, but there's actually 4 companies now making commercial lawnmowers. Greenworks, Mean Green, Gravely, and Toro just came out with one. It's not commercially available yet, but it will be commercially available starting in the fall or next spring. Who's using commercial electric lawnmowers? You can see there's I've listed about 8 lawn care contractors. There's a few more that have popped up. Still a lot of companies that are still using gas, but it's changing, and there's a huge demand for on consumer side of wanting to hire contractors that are using electric equipment because of the noise and the environmental being more green, lower emissions. And then in terms of institutions, Shelburne Farms they just purchased 2 Gravely mowers. University of Vermont's been using electric mowers now for a couple of years, and they're switching out everything to electric. Burlington Parks and Recreation started a couple years ago. They have a couple mowers, maybe 3 or 4. I don't think they're using all electric yet, but they're moving in that direction. The 10 Stones Homeowner Association is where I live. We've been using, this is our 3rd season of using electric mower, and that's only got a 2-hour runtime. We share it among 16 households and mow about 6 acres, and it's been working great. We actually have an online scheduling tool that you just go online and sign up, and because every time you use it, it lowers, it takes something away from the battery range. This way you can keep track of who used it, and then it counts for the recharge time. Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation has 1 mower. I hesitate putting them there. It makes it look like they're making a big switch, but they only have 1 mower so far. They need to get on the ball. And there are some rebates from the electric utilities. They are pretty generous for the walk behind mowers. Many people don't know these exist. And so that's one of the things I'm doing through the Mow Electric campaign is advertising those and promoting them in any way I can, such as this forum. I actually am meeting with the utilities tomorrow. One of my proposals is to work with VIC, Efficiency Vermont, to utilize their resources and expertise to do a better job of getting the word out about these incentives. The incentives for the riding mowers, they are very small right now. And that's the other thing I'm going to be making a proposal tomorrow, that most of the utilities don't even offer a rebate for the riding mowers. It just fell between the cracks, and so I'm looking to rectify that, and I'm hoping those are going to be at least $800 to $1,000 for the residential riding mowers. All the utilities offer a incentive for the commercial mowers. In some cases, they're on the low end, they're $1,000. They go up to $3,500, and this depends on the utility. I'm also encouraging the utilities to be more consistent and for all of them to raise their incentives to at least $2,500. And those incentives are tied directly to greenhouse gas emission reductions. And so the incentives have to pass muster with the Public Utilities Commission. So it's not an easy thing to do, but I've laid out the arguments of why it makes sense to do that. And we'll see what happens for next year. So that's it. I know it was quick. Absolutely encourage anybody that's interested, or the people you work with, to visit the mowelectric.org website. There are a lot of resources on that, lists of all the equipment and links to the websites. It's not as friendly, I shouldn't say friendly, but it's the Drive Electric website. It doesn't compare the cost of each car, and that, like the web, it just lists the companies, and so people have to do a little of their own homework. But I will say that this time of year is a great time to be buying electric yard equipment, because things are going on sale, and you can get some great deals. And yeah, that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, thanks so much, Stephen. I had a quick question. So you mentioned service and repair. So I guess a 2-part. What are you finding with just the overall reliability of the electric equipment? And then second part is, if somebody does need service or repair, where do they go?
Yeah, great questions. First of all, I'll answer the first one. I have yet to meet someone who's had a problem. Now, I had a problem with my steel battery electric string trimmer, and it was the drive shaft, and I just brought it back to Champlain Valley Equipment where I bought it, and they repaired it. And if I hadn't have bought it there, like a lot of this equipment is being bought at either hardware stores or big box stores. And I will say that a lot of hardware stores, Ace Hardware actually is, you can buy one of these $5,000 electric riding mowers, Ego mowers from Ace. Ace is a Ego dealer. They're not going to service it for you. They just sell the stuff. My sense is that pretty much any mower repair place, engine repair place, will be able to repair this equipment. The beauty of it is there's very little moving parts. So there's basically drive motors, blade motors, drive motors, usually pretty accessible. And so oftentimes people that are handy themselves can do a repair job if something happens, which I have yet to meet anybody that's had a problem with their walk behind mower or riding mower. A lot of this stuff is relatively new, but there's just so few moving parts. And that's a big hurdle because it's a whole different paradigm, because people would ask that question because they're used to dealing with their gas powered equipment that needs to be repaired so often, and very complicated, and most people wouldn't even know where to begin, and wouldn't even try. You know, the good news is there's going to be very little to go wrong, and it's going to be relatively easy to fix. And my sense is that these people that do these engine repair, they're just going to start shifting. But it is a good idea, keeping that in mind, that if you're concerned about something like that, to buy something from a dealer that does service as well. For example, Spear Street Mowers in Charlotte is the dealer for Hustler, and Hustler just came out with a riding mower, residential riding mower. So the advantage of buying it from them is if and when something happens, they'll take care of it in a heartbeat.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Stephen. That's great information. It looks like we do have a little bit of time. So before we end for today, I am going to open it up. If anybody has any questions for any of our presenters today, feel free to come off mute. Go ahead, or go ahead and type them in the chat as well.
Eric, I do have one thing I wanted to add.
Go ahead.
The Mow Electric website does have access. In one of the resources is a incentive page. So if you open up the website and go to resources, and then one of the tabs is utility incentives. You just click on that, and all the utilities are listed with links to their applications for their incentives for electric lawn equipment.
Okay, fantastic. Do we have any questions out there for any of our presenters? Don't be shy, jump off mute if you have any, or go ahead and put them in the chat. Do we have any questions? I think there were a few in the chat, and it looks like Dave, thank you. You had answered them in the chat. So with that, I do want to thank you all again for joining. I want to thank all of our presenters. Fantastic job. We will be sending out a link follow-up here with recording. Anybody who maybe didn't catch all of our presentation today. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, so we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.